Hi everyone. This is going to be the lecture for chapter 6 in On Course by Skip Downey. This chapter is about gaining self-awareness or figuring out how to notice when something's wrong in yourself so that way you can adjust and fix it before it becomes a major problem or issue for yourself. So if you've ever done anything where you have started out strong and then stopped in the middle and didn't finish, that's an example of something that is a behavior that if you would have been able to identify what was going on when you were about to drop out, you probably wouldn't have dropped out. And so having self-awareness is very important for figuring out when we're doing things like self-sabotage. So let's start by talking about that. So self-sabotage is when you start to do something that you really want to do. Like maybe you have a goal for yourself. Like I want to finish all my classes this semester, right? But then as you're going through the course, you start to feel lazy and unmotivated. And maybe you stop attending classes, or maybe you stop logging into Canvas, or maybe you stop feeling as engaged as you were maybe at the beginning of the semester, right? So if that happens to you and you get off course, then that means that you are getting in the way of a goal that you set for yourself. So why do we do these things? Why do we set goals that we end up not completing? And a lot of people ask, why even set goals if we know that we're probably not going to complete most of them? And the answer is, well, it's good to set goals because we need to have a direction. We already talked about that, beginning with the end in mind, right? But when it comes to actually completing the goals, we do need to have a certain level of self-awareness in order to complete that. So what I like about this chapter is it kind of gives you all the tools that you need to be successful. And it also gives you all the tools you need to kind of clean up what's going wrong in your life. And when I say clean up what's going wrong in your life, I mean clean up what's going on in your head. So in your head, you have a lot of thought processes like we've talked about. You have that inner critic, you have the inner defender, you have the inner guide. And I've been making you do a lot of work thinking about what those voices are saying inside of your head. That's the first step in gaining self-awareness, is to know how you're speaking to yourself. Are you being encouraging to yourself, or are you being, mean, harsh, and cruel to yourself? Or are you always slacking and not giving, not taking responsibility for stuff that you should be taking responsibility for? It's my mom's fault. It's someone else's fault. When it comes down to it, it's always your responsibility to take care of your goals, your dreams, and yourself. And so that's what this is about. It's about taking care of yourself. So the first thing that we need to talk about in chapter 6 is this thing called scripts. And right now we're using the 8th edition of the book, and I think I'm looking for, I got it right here in front of me. On page 169, you can see there's like a little graph here. This one, the script, it's called the scripts model. And I will attach a copy of that to this presentation too. But you want to make sure you take a look at that. And it's also in the PowerPoint presentation for this chapter. So you want to ask yourself first, before we get started here, what areas of your life are you off course? And which areas need improvement? And then also, which areas of your life are you on course? And that's kind of the journal for this week, is to identify maybe some areas that you have been off course where you've corrected yourself, and maybe identify some areas where you haven't and kind of what happened and why it happened. So by examining what's happened in the past, we can figure out how to make a better future for ourselves. You have to kind of look back at how your habits affect what you're doing right now. So you might have a bunch of really bad habits. Like maybe you start things and don't finish them. Maybe you create a goal and then talk yourself out of it. Maybe you are really hard on yourself and mean to yourself, and then that makes you give up. So there's a lot of things that could be getting in the way here, but you got to look at, what do I do on a daily basis? How do I spend my time? How do I spend my time when no one else is watching? If you're spending your time when no one else is watching, doing the things that are going to get you closer to your goals, then you're on track. If when no one else is watching, you're slacking off and not doing anything, then that means that you're actually doing stuff not for yourself. You're doing it as a performance for other people. Like, look, I'm actually doing something. I'm progressing. I'm moving forward. But if you're doing stuff for other people and you're not really doing it because it's what you want to do, then of course you're not going to be invested and you're not going to want to finish those activities, especially if no one's pushing you towards them. So many of us are used to having like maybe a parent or a significant other who pushes us towards goals. And while that's great, what's going to happen when that person isn't around anymore? Or what happens when you move away from home? Your mom's not there to tell you, go do these things. So hopefully your mom has instilled some good habits in you. So that way, when you do go out in the world, you can continue to be successful, even, without her presence there. Okay, if that makes sense. So ask yourself, what bad habits do I have? What good habits do I have? How are they serving me, or how are they getting in the way? And if I need to change a bad habit, how do I do that? So the best way to change a bad habit is to use the 32-day commitment. The 32-day commitment is part of the book. It's in chapter 4, and it's also an extra credit assignment for the semester. So you have till the end of the semester to complete it. But you basically choose one thing that you could do every day for 32 days, or one thing that you can avoid doing for 32 days. So some examples of 32-day commitments that I've done. I actually quit smoking using a 32-day commitment. I remember one day my boss rolled up on me here on campus at Chafee, and I was smoking a cigarette, and he walked up and said, "I can't believe that you're a smoker." And I was like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I'm a smoker. But it took me like 3 different 32-day commitments to actually quit smoking. So just know that 32 days is a guideline, and a lot of people can change a whole habit in 32 days, but some of us need some extra time. So maybe if we don't do it the first time, then let's do it the next time or the next time. So if you don't get it right the first time, keep doing those 32-day commitments until you make the change that you want. Some other things that students have done. I had a student who said, I'm going to work on my applications for universities for every day for 30 minutes for 32 days. And then she was able to sit down for 30 minutes a day and work on the applications. She got into like 7 universities, ended up choosing University of Hawaii and went there, and actually stayed there, got her master's. So now she's got a master's degree, which is kind of cool. Other 32-day commitments, I had a student that worked at In-N-Out, and I think he was like, I'm not going to eat In-N-Out for 32 days. Because I guess one of his bad habits was he's at work. It's easy just to eat fast, eat In-N-Out. In-N-Out's great, but if you ate it every day, it'd probably not be too good for you. So that was a good 32-day commitment. One thing you should not do for 32-day commitments is exercise, because you do need rest days, and 32-day commitments are for things that you want to just go, go, go every single day. So you wouldn't want to do a 32-day commitment for exercise related stuff. You could use the other form, which is the tracking form. That's also extra credit, 30 points for that if you complete it by the end of the semester. And I'm not going to go into it right now, but if you read chapter 4 and you read the assignment, the directions are very clear, but it allows you to have rest days. So you kind of choose what days you check in with yourself, okay? So let's move on to that Scripps model on page 169. Basically, what we're looking at here is an emotional script. Okay. And I guess you could maybe call it a lot of things, but what a script actually is, according to Skip Downing in this book, is it is a dialogue or a set of events that we expect to happen because of past experiences that we've had. So we're talking a lot about the past in chapter 6, okay? So scripts are formed by us observing the behavior of significant adults in our life when we're kids. So when we're growing up, if our parents treat us positively, then we're probably going to have positive scripts. If our parents treat us negatively, then we're going to have negative scripts that are bad for us, that kind of tear ourselves down. But an example, let me give you an example. So we have scripts for things like a birthday party. That's a good example. So when you go to a birthday party, you expect there to be certain things, like maybe balloons or a cake. You expect them to sing happy birthday, and then the person blows out the candles, right? That was mine. Or, maybe there's presents. And I think it kind of varies. There's little variation. So if it's an adult, like a 21st birthday party, there may not be presents and cake and stuff, but there's probably going to be a lot of alcohol, So we have expectations of the way things are supposed to go. So if you've been to a few birthday parties, you kind of know what to expect at the next birthday party. You do realize when you're in a situation where you don't have a script because you feel very out of sorts and uncomfortable and not sure what you're supposed to be doing. One time, I'm not Buddhist, but I actually went to a Japanese Buddhist temple. And first of all, they were speaking a different language, so I don't know Japanese, and so I was a little lost. But they were doing all these behaviors, kneeling, standing, praying, I don't know. And I was really just kind of looking around trying to figure out, what am I supposed to be doing right now? I'm not sure. So when you feel that way, that means you don't have a script for this. And so, yeah, it's a little uncomfortable. But most of the time, we do have scripts, and even if we're not sure if we have the right exact script for a situation, we might just plug in another one that's similar. Be like, oh, I've been to the DMV before, so the Social Security office is probably pretty similar. So I can expect similar stuff at those places, even if I've never been to Social Security office. It's a government agency. I can expect it's probably run similarly. So we tend to look at our lives every single day based off of the scripts that we have already written, already in our head. So we walk around with like all these expectations of the way things are supposed to go. And this is true for not just like things like birthday parties, but for things like relationships, jobs, for school, for, friendships. So we have a lot of scripts that we are not even aware that we have. They're just operating as we're going about our business, sort of under the radar. Okay. So in these scripts, there's a couple of different pieces that belong in a script. So let's go over those pieces. So the first piece in the very middle is called our core beliefs. And it's in the middle because it's the core of who we are. If we believe we are a bad person or a good person. So generally, if you have good, positive core beliefs, you feel like you're a good person, you deserve good things. If you have negative core beliefs, then you believe that you're not a good person, that you don't deserve happiness, that bad things are always going to happen to you, and you kind of have that like everybody's out for me victim mentality. So how you were raised is what determines whether you have positive core beliefs and negative core beliefs. So like I said, if you have parents that are always going around saying, you're such a wonderful child, we're so happy we had you, we love you so much, then you probably grew up having positive core beliefs, feeling good about yourself. And when you go about your life, you probably relate to people relatively well, and people feel pretty good about you too. And that's wonderful. But for some of us, that's not the case. Maybe our parents abused us. Maybe we were physically, mentally, or some other type of abuse happened to us. A lot of parents are verbally abusive, and they'll say mean things, and they would never do anything to you or to harm you, but they say things that harm you. So if you had those type of parents who are saying things like, I wish you were never born, and why do we even have you, or you're good for nothing, that kind of stuff. Or if the worst case scenario, if your parents neglected you. So let's say your parents didn't really give you any feedback at all. You were just sort of left to your own devices. Maybe your needs weren't met. You're going to have the worst case of negative core beliefs. Most people kind of have a mixture. So we have some really positive beliefs and then some really negative beliefs. But I think we can tell whether we have positive or negative core beliefs by looking at the other three pieces of a script. Okay, so the anatomy of a script, back to that little diagram, in the middle is the core beliefs. On the outside are three things: thought patterns, emotional patterns, and behavior patterns. Okay, so the most observable of those, I would say, would be behavior patterns. So let's start there. So with behavior patterns, we can easily look and see whether somebody is on course or off course based on their behaviors. So for example, my son, I've been struggling with him. He is 16 years old right now, and he kind of stopped putting in effort at school when he was in 5th or 6th grade, and now he's a sophomore, and he is so behind in school. He does have a disability, like learning disabilities and things like that, so they're able to give him maybe some extra time to finish, but that he actually has to start doing some work. He will literally not do his work because unfortunately, he probably has negative core beliefs. And as a parent, I've tried to do everything to be the best mom that I can. But I think sometimes, we can't help what happens to a person. Maybe it wasn't your parents that messed you up. Maybe it was another family member, or maybe it was a traumatic experience that you went through. For my son, I think, he almost drowned when he was very young, and I think it really affected him. So you never know. It could be not just one event either, but a bunch of events, right? So his behavior is saying he has negative core beliefs because he's not putting in the effort to do what would benefit him, which would be to get through high school, right? He's like, I'd rather just drop out. I don't think he knows how bad that would be if he did that. But most of us probably know we should finish high school. That's a good thing to do. So behavior patterns, if you see people doing things like, oh, they're doing a lot of drugs, or, engaging in, addictive type of behaviors, if they're being violent, mean, horrible to other people, acting out in those ways, maybe they can't keep a job, they keep getting fired, just behaviors we can look at and say, that person is not doing everything that they should be doing or that they could be doing to reach the goals that they've set for themselves, because ultimately it's about what goals you have for you that's important. Okay, so the other thing, okay, we got behavior patterns, then we got emotional patterns. And I think that's something that, is a little harder for, I guess, just an observer looking at you to tell how you're feeling in any given moment. But if you check in with yourself and you're honest about how you're feeling emotionally, and ask yourself, do I feel generally good, or do I feel generally more bad? And when I say good versus bad, I mean there's good emotions like happiness, joy, excitement, that kind of stuff. And then there's bad emotions, just resentment, anger, anything negative, really. So if you boil it down that way, it's if you're feeling mostly positive stuff, you probably have a positive set of core beliefs. But if you're always feeling really crappy, then you maybe have a negative set of core beliefs. Again, this is like assuming that you don't have a severe emotional mental illness. If you do have an emotional mental illness, maybe your emotional patterns may have contributed to that, or maybe your negative core beliefs may have contributed to that. But also, there's probably a biological piece there as well that you don't really have control over. So, but that may be something that you have to work around or live with, because if you are suffering from maybe like an anxiety disorder or depression or something like that, you do have to address those things so that way you can get those handled, whether that's by medication or therapy or both, so that way you can kind of get your core beliefs back on track. And that's the cool thing about this, is that you can change your core beliefs by changing these three things. So if you change your behaviors, you change your emotions, and you change your thoughts, it will change your core beliefs eventually. So the last one is thought patterns. And of course, an observer might not be able to look at you and see how you're feeling, but you know what you're thinking, and you know what your thought process is like. And I've asked you the past week or so to really think about that thought process. So are you thinking positive thoughts? Are you using the voice of the inner guide? Or are you engaging in, self-bashing, mean, self-deprecating behaviors or self-deprecating thoughts? If you are, then you probably have negative core beliefs. So your thought process is something that you have a lot more control over than you think. But you also have control over your behaviors, and you also have control over your emotions. A lot of people think they don't have control over their emotions, but they do. It's just a learned skill or practicing, that would just growth mindset towards that will help you. So here's the bottom line. If you have negative core beliefs, or you feel like you might have negative core beliefs, it's okay. It's okay. You can change those negative core beliefs into positive core beliefs by changing your thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. So something horrible happens to you, you just have to choose a different behavior than you would normally choose. And you have to choose different thoughts. How will I think about this differently? And emotions. So let's talk about Eminem. You guys know who he is? I'm sure you do. He's a pretty popular guy. I was just listening to his new album with, I guess it's the newest album, with my son the other day. And Interestingly enough, he had a song on there about hating his mom and wanting to kill her. And I get that he's angry and upset, like she was a crappy mom. But he's a really good example of someone that still has negative core beliefs. And I don't know how old he is. I think he's like 50. I don't know. He's getting pretty old. He's in his late 40s, something like that. But he still blames his mother for fucking him up. Okay. So he blames his mom for what's currently going on in his life, which, as far as I'm concerned, is a stretch because how long has he been out on his own as an adult? How long has he been successful? How long has he been, working towards his own goals? It's been a long time now. So, whatever emotions and things that are left over from, his mom, he needs to address those himself because it's not her fault anymore. It's his fault for continuing to allow that to influence and mess up his life, right? So, well, I just want to say to him, hey, buddy, Marshall, if you just change your thoughts and emotions and behaviors about your mom, things are going to change for you. So the worst thing you could do is make a song about how much you hate her because that's just going to reinforce those negative behaviors, those negative thoughts, and those negative emotions, right? And the more you engage, and think about those negative things, the more they're going to hurt you. I feel bad for him. So I hope that at some point in his life, he's able to kind of turn this around and feel better about himself and let go of, it's my mom's fault, it's so and so's fault, and take that inner guide voice instead of the inner defender. He's a good example of someone that uses primarily the inner defender to, I guess, cope with those negative core beliefs that he has. It's always someone else's fault, someone else's problem, someone else's issue. Okay. So if you really want to change, you've got to let go of whose fault it is. It's nobody's fault anymore. Like whoever caused it, that was a long time ago. It's time to move forward instead of looking back. It's time to take responsibility for what you have control over and let go of the stuff that you don't have control over, like what your parents did to you or treated you like when you were 2, okay? The problem with scripts, just in general, is that we may be holding on to stuff that's too old. So it's expired. So Eminem, Marshall, is hanging on to expired issues that, so he should have thrown those away a long time ago. So that's what I'm saying to you, is you need to let go of or throw away any blame that you have towards anybody about what happened to you when you were a kid in order to move forward with your life. Because if you're constantly blaming somebody else, you're probably using that as an excuse to not take responsibility for yourself and your life today. So what you can do is focus on, okay, what kind of behaviors have I been engaging in that haven't been working? How do I fix that? What would be workable? So, for example, if you haven't worked on your schoolwork in a couple of weeks and you're feeling kind of like you're starting to disengage, this is the time to go, okay, what behavior can I change? Okay, so I'm not engaging. Okay, guess I'm going to engage because that's the opposite behavior. That will probably work for me. So that's the easiest thing to change is behaviors because you can see them, other people can see them. It's easy to pinpoint, oh, there's the problem. I'm just not doing this thing, or I need to not do this thing and do this instead. So you need to identify, where am I screwing up? And if you can do it in real time, like as you're going, instead of several weeks afterwards looking back and going, how did I screw up? Then you're making progress, okay? But we're all in different places. We're starting from different places. So nobody expects you to change everything in a day or be better overnight. This is something that takes a long time. And I would say if you can do this, this is what therapists work on their clients with in therapy. Things like this, we look at what happened in your past and how that's affecting your future. So that's what you should do in order to move forward. You can use a therapist if you want, but you can also just do this alone. You can also just figure out, okay, what emotions do I engage in that aren't working for me? So let me tell you a story, only because one of my students really wanted me to tell you guys this. So one of my students, he had this anger management problem, and he had actually gotten into some trouble in high school over it and had to take some classes on anger management and things like that, but he hadn't really changed and he didn't really see why he needed to change. So he was at this bar one night And what happened was this guy next to him was kind of groping the girl on the other side of him. And she was telling the guy, stop it, don't touch me, hey, stop it. And he kept trying to reach up her dress and mess with her. And so he kind of took it upon himself he got mad and he took it upon himself to teach this guy a lesson. And he got in the guy's face. They had words. I don't know what they were, but it resulted in them getting into a physical fight. In the physical fight, my student really beat up this other kid. Okay. And I say kid, they're in a bar, so they're over 21. But they're young. And unfortunately, he did beat the guy up pretty bad. And when he did that, he had no way of knowing this, but that guy was actually there with his father. And his father happened to be a police officer. So my student got arrested by that police officer, taken in and charged and booked. And he had to go to court. He had to pay a lot of money, and he lost the case. I mean, it was like a cop and his kid against him. He had to spend time in jail for that. So he told everybody, all my students, hey, take this stuff seriously, because if you don't, you're going to continue on a path that might lead you to somewhere you don't want to be. Okay, so if you have anger management issues or you have trouble with certain types of negative emotions, then you need to manage those. And whether that's through therapy or just through you basically telling yourself, hey, every time I get angry, I'm going to choose a different way of thinking and I'm going to choose a different way of behaving. So, I mean, it's okay to be mad, but it's not okay to punch a hole in the wall. It's okay to be mad, but it's not okay to hit somebody. It's okay to be mad, but it's not okay to pull out a gun and shoot someone. Okay, so it's like, it's okay to be mad, but then how do you deal with those feelings? You need to find a positive outlet for those. And as we get into chapter 7 and 8 in Encores, we're going to get into different ways to manage negative emotions and stress. Okay, so lastly, we have our thought patterns. So how do you change a thought pattern? I got a couple ways for you. Number one way is affirmations. Remember, I, Amy, am a strong and confident woman, and I deserve to be happy. So the more I say this to myself, the more I'm going to actually believe it, the more I'm going to feel it. So just like when you hear a song on the radio and you don't like it at first, after they play it a bajillion times, you start to like it and know the song and sing the words, and next thing you know, you like it. So all you have to do is apply that principle to your affirmations. The more you say positive things about yourself as if you already have them, I, Amy, am a good writer. I, Amy, have what it takes to succeed. All that stuff is great stuff. So the more I say that stuff to myself, the more I will believe it, the more it will become true for me. So with thought patterns, it's really about if you hear a negative thought pattern in your head. So let's say I hear, Amy, you didn't really do a good job making this video. You could have done better. You use a lot of hand gestures. You drop the F-bomb. What are you doing? Okay. I could have that thought pattern, or I could say, hey, I'm working at becoming better at making these videos, doing video lectures. It's a lot different than lecturing to a group of students in a classroom. So there's going to be a learning curve there, and you're going to get better. And maybe you guys can help me. So if you see something that I could do better, you could let me know. I would appreciate that. So that's a great way for me. Oh, sorry, my screensaver went on and I couldn't see my notes anymore. So yeah. So anyway, I lost my train of thought. But that's a good way for me to kind of change my thought patterns. So hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say. If you change your thought pattern, it will also change your behavior pattern. And it will also change your emotional pattern. And it will also change your core beliefs. Okay? And same thing goes for if I change my emotional pattern, it will change my thought pattern and my behavior pattern and my core beliefs. And if I change my behavior patterns, it will change my thought patterns, my emotional patterns, and my core beliefs. You can't really just go in and change your core beliefs. You have to change these other things around them. The behaviors, the thoughts, and the emotions have to be changed in order for those core beliefs to change. But good news, they're changeable. So I feel like Eminem, if I had a chance to talk to him, explain this to him, he might really understand it and put it into practice. And next thing you know, he would have positive core beliefs and he wouldn't feel the need to write a song about, how much he hates his mom. And as a mom, I could say like, oh man, if my kid wrote a song like that, I would just feel terrible. But if that's what he needs to do to blow off some steam, cool. But I just want you guys to know that there's a better way. Um, it's okay to be mad, but it's not okay to write a song about how you want to kill your mom. It's okay to be mad, but it's not okay to, I guess, bomb the school or whatever. So you got to be aware and careful of how your emotions, your thoughts, and behaviors are synergizing to create the whole that is you. And ask yourself too, how are these things related to the bad habits that I've gotten into lately or the good habits that I've gotten into lately? A lot of my students from this point, where we're in chapter 6, once they start to change their core beliefs, this is what really gives them the success that they need to, I guess, go on and finish their degree and go do what they want to do with their life. So once you know that you have complete control and all this stuff is completely changeable, it's a lot easier and there's a lot more hope too. And then you got to have that growth mindset. So remember, growth mindset is the belief that our intelligence can be changed by practice. And so emotional intelligence is a type of intelligence. So you can actually improve your emotional intelligence by just focusing on these three things: thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. And if you can change those things into positive things, then you're going to be going places. It's that easy. All right, guys. So it was fun, and I will see you in my next video.